Hello, everybody. My name is Richard Anthony. I'm the chair of the Zero Waste International Alliance. This panel is going to talk about the introduction to zero waste. The first speaker would be myself, Richard Anthony. Uh, I am chairman of the Zero Waste International Alliance. I'm on the board of directors of Zero Waste USA, and actually, I'm a director in Zero Waste San Diego. So, zero waste is my life. Hello, everybody. My name is Richard Anthony. I'm the chair of the Zero Waste International Alliance and vice president in charge of advocacy for the Zero Zero Waste USA. This is a part of a class that we introduced that we have that allows people to get all the information they need about zero waste so that they can become a zero waste associate. So this is what I'm going to present today is some of the basics of the introduction to zero waste class. Um, our our affiliates include, in terms of the Zero Waste International Alliance, we're a virtual organization, and then we have national members who handle their own fiduciary issues. But on the top, the Zero Waste International Alliance vets all definitions and mission statements and hierarchies. And part of our group is Canada and Zero Waste Europe, which is now growing leaps and bounds. Mother Earth in the Philippines. We also have a Zero Waste Youth Group that is international, started from Brazil and spread around the world, and of course, Zero Waste Brazil. So in terms of the Zero Waste Associates training, we provide zero waste principles and tools, and on March 9th through Zoom, so you can get online, a 5-hour class featuring international zero waste global principles. The Zero Waste Associates class will be April 6th, again via Zoom, a 5-hour class. Participants will present their class projects, draft zero waste plans for community businesses and institutions. Participants who complete the class will pass the exam and will be certified as a Zero Waste Associate. For more information, there is the link on the PowerPoint. So let's talk about zero waste. Zero waste, what is zero waste? People want to know, and we've worked really hard internationally to basically define in a lot of different languages this definition, because it is really important that people have the correct understanding of what we're talking about zero waste. So when we talk about zero waste, we're talking about reduce, reuse, and recycle. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Reuse and recycle are basically the same process, reuse being the high end and recycle being the below end. Focusing on reducing and reusing, then recycling, composting, and redesigning the rest. So we've gone through the international for about 15 years, and we've developed definitions that have been vetted throughout the world, as a matter of fact. And this most current one includes both the top end planners and designers and the bottom end organizers and campaigners. And we all came together on this definition. Zero waste is the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery of products, packaging, and materials without burning and with no discharges to land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health. So when we look at zero waste, we see that zero waste is the model. Nature is the model. We want to emulate nature in what we do. The concept of fighting nature and trying to stop the events of nature by combating it doesn't work. We need to deal with nature and look at that process, because we are all organic. Joanne Bennis, Biomimicry, it's a great book about inventions that have to do with looking at nature and then modeling that as we come up with our solutions. Nature is our model. Zero waste means that we're going to reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost, period. This is the way we want to get to. We want to design all our products for the reduce, reuse, and recycle and composting. And in the end, no burn and no bury. The burning, of course, destroys the resources if we wanted to recover them in the first place. And secondly, puts dangerous emissions into the atmosphere, causing global warming, or at least working with or influencing global warming for sure. No bury. We don't want landfills. Landfills are a problem. That it's a waste of good land that could be used for production or housing. Plus, these are all resources scattered around that could be recovered. Uh, we would look at a dry tomb type of landfill without any organics. The organics, water in landfills will cause methane and leachate, and these are real problems. So we want to stay away from incineration and landfilling as we design our future in terms of how we're going to handle our production and our recycling and our composting. So no discharges to land, water, and air. And I'll just say it one more time because these are the commons here: the air, the water, and land. This is what all humanity, all life on the planet share. And anybody who pollutes that is a violator of life on this planet, and it's wrong. So, and we didn't know that maybe in the 40s or the 50s, or didn't have the populations hundreds of years ago. But today, at 7 billion people moving on to 8, we can't afford to pollute our air, our water, our land. And in many cases, the air is at capacity. We know that with the carbon dioxide melting the polar caps. And we know that in terms of the ocean, where there looks like in 10, 20 years at the rate of discarding, we'll have more plastic in the ocean than fish. And these are feeding grounds and breathing grounds of the people on this planet. And so no discharges to land, water, and air. This cannot be part of your planning process when you want to produce a product. No, wrong way. So when we looked at that, we said, okay, fine. People need to understand there is a hierarchy of highest and best use, and we worked on this. This has been internationally vetted through ZWIA, Zero Waste International Alliance, and essentially, there was 3 or 4 international discussions where this was finally finalized. And bottom line is what we're saying is rethink and redesign. Look at your product. People like it, fine. Let's make it so it's recyclable or compostable. Secondly, on behalf of the consumer, we want people to just basically, and actually a manufacturer or a business, reduce what you use. A good one was like in Toyota came up with: recycle some, then recycle some more, and then recycle less. Recognize that you even though you're recycling that resource, you could reduce the use of the reuse of that resource if instead of cardboard boxes, you use some sort of reusable container that could be sent back and forth. So you want to reduce the amount of materials that you buy and you use and you waste. And then finally, uh, you you want to recycle. You want to be under the reuse. I want to talk just a sense. We want to make the manufacturer design the product for reuse and repair. So if it breaks, I can fix it and it still keeps going. If it breaks and can't and is done, it can no longer be used, then it has to be easily dismantled. Countries like Germany are making requirements on automobiles that all parts are labeled so that they can be dismantled piece by piece and recycled and reused. It's a matter of saving steel and aluminum and precious metals. Finally, recycle all technical materials, things that are inert, uh, can be recycled. All organic materials can be composted, and composites should be not allowed. We should make things that either recyclables or compostables, and then we won't need to have the bottom level of material recovery or residual management. And of course, unacceptable is the landfill and the incinerator. So when we look at zero waste, now that we understand it's about nature and it's about not polluting the environment and it's about conserving resources, what are some of the benefits to changing the way your habits so you move towards zero waste? First of all, let's just say one of the biggest drivers that we have is the methane that is covering the poles. This is actually an old picture of methane Earth from NASA, and it's a lot worse. But the key thing on methane is that it's being generated at the landfill, and methane is 25 to 72 times more deadly than CO2. So, like in states of California, the 6th largest economy in the world, we have banned organics from the landfill primarily to reduce greenhouse gases. The other part is resources. When we see a ton of chairs or a ton of reusable materials, there's 71 tons of resources that were used to make that final product. Uh, this this is by recycling, you are going to save all these kinds of, you at least not eliminate, but at least reduce the amount of timber and hauling and energy and mining. And the fact is, all that energy that was taken to make all these products is going to be embodied in the product, and therefore we can recycle this material and save energy up front. As a population grows and the planet's resources are depleted, it's more and more to recognize that we can save these 71 tons for every 1 ton by recycling and composting. The other part is in the production of consumer goods, we find that about 44% of that material in terms of provision of the goods are greenhouse gas emissions, including emissions embodied in the international trade. So just localizing your trade, uh, uh, reuse and recycling rather than single-use products, this is going to reduce this kind of waste of energy. So what we looked at in California, and then it's actually worldwide now, we do this everywhere. We can take it's a waste reduction, waste assessment recycling model, WARM. EPA has it, and basically, if you put in all the materials that are generated as discards, it'll show you the greenhouse gases that are diminished if you recycle. So when we looked at recycling and composting in California, equal to eliminating all the exhausts from all the cars in California, and this is a freeway state. That's a huge impact, and so we're moving towards electric cars here in California. So when you talk about waste drivers and benefits to communities, let's just sort of list a little bit of them. One, it's going to reduce climate change. Two, it's going to create green jobs by reducing and recycling. You're going to create all kinds of new activities for people to do. On the bottom end, in terms of the sorting, but on the top end, in terms of designing and creating new products. It's going to promote local sustainability. I like to point out that your glass and your metal and your paper are global items, and there's a global market price for them. Your organic should go to your local farmers so that you grow food and reserve and conserve water and make the soils better. And your same thing with your reusables. These should be sent back to the local community in terms of sharing what you have and saving a lot of transportation. uh, Zero waste will assist local businesses because it brings people back into town to doing things rather than having to deal with things all over the world. It promotes local food and nutrients back to the soil in the organic part, and it protects health of the residents. Some of the organizations that have done this in terms of adopting zero waste has been Zero Waste Gainsburg, Zero Waste Seattle, Zero Waste Mountain Village, Zero Waste Fort Collins, Zero Waste Oceanside, Zero Waste San Diego, Pasadena. A bunch of cities have now adopted this and are moving forward. In terms of businesses, when you look at recycling and composting, and when you look at purchasing ahead of time and realizing that what you're purchasing might end up in the waste bin, and you change the way you purchase, and you make your vendors be more responsible for taking back the discards, it's going to save you money. By reducing the amount of material going to landfill, it's going to reduce your liability into that ultimate landfill when they have to clean it up and they look at the local businesses to be responsible. It's going to increase your efficiency of your business. The less waste, the more efficient you are. It'll reduce greenhouse gas emissions, gives you a marketing edge, the triple bottom line, by saving your protecting the community product by making products that are compliable to the community. It's clean energy and saves energy, and it's the right thing to do. And there are big companies around the world who have adopted zero waste as their uh, corporate goals. Sierra Nevada, a big brewery in the United States, Fisser, a winery, Whole Foods, Delaware North, Disneyland, and Inc., American Licorice Company, Raytheon. Uh, There are hundreds of companies now around the world that are using zero waste as their corporate guide for their products and their distribution. So bottom line is zero waste creates jobs by liberating these materials from the landfill and incinerator and making them available. It's going to create all kinds of new jobs. For example, we know that for 10,000 tons of discards going to the landfill, it'll create one job, that guy on the dozer. But if you compost, if you separate the organics, which is half of what's being generated as a discard, and you take it to a farm or a composting facility, you're going to create 4 jobs. So already by taking half of it and composting it, you've created 4 times what you had when you landfilled it. But if you recycle on the technical side, all the paper and metal and glass, this is the Santa Monica Recycling Center. You can see bales of aluminum and bales of cardboard, 10,000 tons. Well, it's going to create 10 recycling jobs. So that's 10 times what the landfill is. But if you liberate the reusables and the repairables, you don't bury the reusables in the landfill or burn them in the incinerator, and you send them to warehouses like Urban Ore here in Berkeley, where you can find a door or a window for the building you're looking at, or you've designer jeans or whatever, you're going to create 250 reuse jobs. Uh, this is where we want to head. These are local jobs. These are sustainability for your community. So that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. And if you had any questions, I'm now open. The next speaker is Jamie Kaminsky. Jamie Kaminsky is the chair of Zero Waste Canada. He's on the board of directors of the Zero Waste International Alliance, and he's involved in zero waste certification. Jamie Kaminsky.
The following presentation was recorded on the unceded, traditional, and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, also known as Vancouver. We believe it is especially important to acknowledge the land, as well as Indigenous knowledge, when speaking about environmental justice, a core pillar of zero waste. During this presentation, we will be sharing key takeaways from Zero Waste Canada's Zero Waste Fundamentals program, designed to provide a solid foundation in zero waste policies, practices, values, and concepts. Our first guiding question is why? Why zero waste? Why is this becoming an increasingly topical issue? Why is a recurring question when it comes to zero waste and is often our starting point. And the reason why is because we have a waste problem. These images here were taken from within the Metro Vancouver region, yet this could just as easily be anywhere else in Canada or around the world. If we had to sum up where we stand today on the waste front, these images here would still prove an accurate representation of where we are today. We do not value the vast majority of the resources that we utilize, and continuing to manage our materials in this manner does not leave us with very many options at this stage. If we follow the trail of the materials that we see in these images, we will ultimately identify 3 primary outcomes. If uncollected, we will lose them as litter, while if collected, they will likely end up in either a landfill or a waste incinerator. All of which has led to a growing push for an alternative which today falls under the banner of zero waste. So regardless of where specifically our waste materials are ending up, whether these are going away via water, land, or air, all of this comes right back to us as human beings, as we're increasingly learning and realizing. We can effectively say that we are eating, drinking, and breathing in our own waste in one form or another. It's the web of life, which we are very much a part of. Whatever hurts the web, hurts ourselves just as much. This is where phrases such as "there's no such thing as a way" come from. This is not just an environmental slogan, this is a growing reality we are still learning about with time. These are also all important reasons why waste and why zero waste has received more and more attention over the years. Another reason why is that there is a growing cost to all of this as well. In 2019, the European Union announced its intentions for a single-use plastics ban, covering specific items with existing alternatives, arguing that this would address 70% of marine litter items, avoiding environmental damages that would otherwise cost the EU €22 billion by 2030. This effort was part of the Union's declared circular economy efforts, which balance economic as well as social and environmental concerns. In 2018, the City of Vancouver approved a single-use item reduction strategy, arguing that Vancouver taxpayers were paying $2.5 million per year for the collection of single-use items from public waste bins and from the ground as litter. This effort was part of the city's declared objective of zero waste. In 2019, Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, announced a similar single-use plastic ban as the EU, arguing that Canadians currently throw away $8 billion worth of plastic material every single year, and that by recycling or reusing these plastics, that Canada could reduce pollution, generate billions of dollars in revenue, and in the process, create approximately 42,000 jobs. Globally, it is estimated that 95% of plastic packaging material value is lost to the global economy each year, worth anywhere between 80 billion to 120 billion US dollars. This economic logic is becoming increasingly apparent around the world, at the local and national level, as we realize the value of shifting away from waste management towards resource management, from an approach which is a revenue extractor to an alternative approach which is a revenue generator, an approach which in turn offers a variety of additional benefits ranging from employment to health. This is no longer just an environmental issue in the conventional understanding of the term. This issue represents an untapped opportunity with a wide variety of benefits for human as well as ecological systems. So our guiding question in the next portion of the program is what? What have we been doing about the waste issue to date? And what is the zero waste alternative?
To answer the question, what are we doing about it? What are we doing about our issue of waste? This diagram represents where the bulk of our efforts have gone, to try to recycle or compost our waste and to burn whatever's left. These have been our most significant efforts to date to address this issue of overconsumption, our go-to solutions. Without needing to go into detail, this diagram shows you what the value of these approaches are. Recycling and composting, when source separated and managed responsibly, allow us the opportunity to provide feedback and some circularity to the system of materials consumption and production, allowing us to recapture materials and put them back into the system. This puts less pressure on our need to extract virgin resources from our Earth. However, if not done responsibly, there's little to no benefit. As for incineration, we can see how there isn't any feedback. We can see how incineration really doesn't do anything to address our issue of overconsumption. In fact, it risks further perpetuating it. And so, incineration has become a concern in both principle and practice. Because it appears on the surface to be only making our mistakes disappear. By making our mistakes seemingly disappear, as a result, no system of feedback and no process of improvement takes place. Everything just stops at this stage, as we can see very clearly in our diagram. It simply ends. It's really just a further extension of our linear economic model of take, make, use, and dispose.
The answer from a zero waste perspective is best described via what's known as the wasteberg. What the wasteberg teaches us is that for every 1 ton of waste you and I generate, an average of 71 tons are generated further upstream in their production or manufacturing processes, and everything that they involve, from material extraction to the very last stage of waste management. In other words, the vast majority of a product's impact in terms of waste, and not just waste, has already taken place before that item has even entered into your hands at the end of the line, before you bought it, and before you even had the time to ask yourself what you can do with it. As a result of this perspective, we may start to realize how, despite the fact that the vast majority of our efforts and discussions taking place around waste tend to revolve around what material something is made out of, so that we can identify what we can do with it or which bin to put it in, despite still all being valuable, really primarily only address that 1 ton that we all visibly see above the surface. This is just looking at the waste that we generate at the end of the line. it isn't quite addressing the 71 tons beneath the surface that we don't typically see. This is because these represent recycling, or at best, industrial composting solutions. But when it comes to the issue of waste and making systemic decisions, which are the most valuable for all, as long as we remain within the mindset of single-use items, we are still thinking linearly. We are still trying to find the easiest, cheapest possible way, which requires the least amount of thought and effort, the least amount of change to address our waste issue. But zero waste is asking that we do more. Zero waste begins by challenging our very notion of waste, and the inevitability of waste that we seem to have surrendered to today. What zero waste is asking of us is, yes, to focus on the 1 ton above the surface that we all see, as we are for the most part already doing today, but to also focus on the 71 tons, to make sure we are looking at the whole picture, not just at what you and I can visibly see above the surface. What zero waste is ultimately asking of us is to not generate the 1 ton above the surface, but also the 71 tons beneath the surface, or at the least to minimize the number of times in which we feel the need to do so. The key word in order for us to be able to do this, we quickly realize, becomes reuse, much more so than recycling. Because when we engage in practices of reuse, on the one hand, we are no longer generating the 1 ton, because we are reusing that item, and so we are no longer creating waste on our end. And because it's reusable, we will no longer be generating the 71 tons required to produce it again either. In so doing, we have single-handedly removed ourselves from this equation. We have gone beyond the superficial. We have engaged in a practice which allows us to completely step outside of this linear equation, which addresses the whole picture, the whole wasteberg. This, in essence, is zero waste. Zero waste is, as a result, defined as the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery of products, packaging, and materials without burning and with no discharges to land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health. This represents the first and only peer-reviewed and internationally accepted definition of zero waste, formulated by the Zero Waste International Alliance. So to answer our guiding question of what, this is zero waste.
In session 1, we asked the question why. Why do we need zero waste? In session 2, we asked the question what? What are we currently doing to address our issue of excess resource extraction and overconsumption, and what is zero waste? Our guiding question for this portion of the program is therefore how? How do we apply zero waste? The key takeaway from the zero waste hierarchy is that all of these stages, including the final unacceptable section, are ultimately part of a zero waste strategy, because even avoiding a process is part of a strategy just as much as embracing one. And when it comes to decision making for zero waste, this represents the order in which we want to be prioritizing our decisions. The hierarchy is divided up for a reason. First and foremost, we want to be focusing on the top tier of the hierarchy, as these represent activities which address our issue of overconsumption, because these avoid waste. The second section of the hierarchy is where we look when we enter the waste stage and we need to manage the waste materials that we did generate. Throughout the hierarchy, actions are to be prioritized according to the order in which they appear. From top to bottom, zero waste happens at the top. Everything else represents waste or at best resource management solutions, with the last section explaining what systems to avoid. A second takeaway is the moment we enter the waste stage, starting with recycling and composting, is also the moment we begin to lose control. The further up the zero waste hierarchy we go, the further we have control as individuals, and the more we are therefore engaging people. This is a key aspect to zero waste. We are putting people and communities at the center of our waste issue and at the center of our response to waste. Zero waste is not leaving our waste issues up to technological approaches designed by engineers or up to new forms of innovation in products and product packaging designed by industrial designers. While these may help, communities are put at the center of the zero waste alternative. When we are following these zero waste strategies, we are taking back control over our impacts as people and as communities, and we are building stronger and more resilient communities in the process. Because zero waste represents a community-based approach first and foremost. As soon as we leave the top of the hierarchy and instead begin with recycling and composting, we begin to lose control over our impact. Because from this point on, you are no longer making decisions about what happens with that product or material. People are at the center of the zero waste alternative, and the further down the hierarchy we go, the further away from people we go. The further people lose control over their impact and lose transparency as to what the impacts of our consumption habits truly are. This is zero waste, and this is what zero waste means in practice. The key word when it comes to zero waste and how we work towards zero waste in practice once again becomes reuse, more so than recycling. To use food service items as a simple example for reference, we spend an extraordinary amount of time concerning ourselves with the materials our products and packaging are made out of. We spend vast amounts of time and energy asking ourselves whether these items are plastic, bioplastic, paper, wax paper, paper lined with plastic, biodegradable, oxo-degradable, bio-based, plant-based, compostable, certified compostable, and so on and so forth. While it is important to understand what materials our products are made out of and how we can responsibly manage these products after they have been considered waste, these questions still only address a product once it has become waste. When using a zero waste approach, the first question you ask shifts from what can I do with it once it becomes waste to how can I avoid generating waste in the first place, or how can I get to the point where I actually need to recycle and compost less because I'm just not generating as much anymore to begin with.
When it comes to applying zero waste in practice, it is important to understand that zero waste is a process, a journey, and that we will all be at a different stage along this journey. As we covered in session 1, we are collectively, globally, over-consuming today, particularly in regions of the world such as North America. We generate large amounts of waste compared to the number of people inhabiting this area of the world. And you may have heard about some individuals who have responded to this waste issue by purposely challenging themselves to generate the least amount of waste as possible across their lifestyles. Some being able to generate as little as a jar's worth of waste over the course of one entire year. An activity which has gained quite a bit of public attention and which many have come to associate with zero waste. And yet regardless of where you fall on the zero waste spectrum, whether you are closer to that jar's worth of waste over the course of an entire year, or whether you are closer to a truckload of waste at the opposite end, zero waste is a journey that we may all participate in, regardless of your specific location or current lifestyle. Even though our individual journeys will look different, the one common denominator is that we are all working in the same direction. As long as we are staying true to what zero waste is truly all about, to what zero waste is asking of us. And a final yet key outcome of working towards zero waste, once you really get into zero waste, is that we build community in the process. In this case, we are looking at this from an individual standpoint, but these could just as well be multiple businesses or communities. The further and further we get into zero waste, the further and further we work towards challenging our notion of waste, towards making the most of what we already have, the further we find ourselves engaging with other people, making connections and working together towards the outcomes we want to see. Building community is ultimately at the center of zero waste. Zero waste is about benefiting all our communities without leaving people behind, and working towards zero waste itself involves building community. Zero waste is about actually living within our communities once again, as opposed to within our tablets, phones, computers, and television sets, where we are told yet what more to buy every few seconds, every single day. Overconsumption, it could be argued, is in several ways the function of not having a community. Community development remains essential in order for us to be able to live back within our communities, as opposed to within our material possessions, so that we may be able to rely on more inclusive and resilient communities, which benefit all, as opposed to the individualistic path of growing our own material wealth, which benefits ourselves, and often at the expense of others. Our first guiding question for the final session of this program therefore comes back to the question of why. Why zero waste? All of these ulterior aspects that zero waste is tied to, that zero waste helps us address, are part of the wider value of zero waste and of the zero waste alternative. This is why we say that zero waste is ultimately about a lot more than just waste, because it is tied to all these wider concerns in multiple different areas, providing benefits, providing value to each. This is therefore the added value of a zero waste strategy, as the benefits of a zero waste strategy are far-reaching at all levels, even though it may begin with waste. Zero waste is therefore sustainability. To take the wider benefits of zero waste we have looked at even further, these are the big picture issues that zero waste helps us work towards. These here are the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the greatest challenges we face today and in the foreseeable future as a global society. If we are therefore actively working towards zero waste, then we may find ourselves working towards these wider goals as well, either directly or indirectly. This represents our vision, our best vision, for an environmentally stable and a socially just world. And zero waste represents a bottom-up strategy, which allows us to work in the direction of all these large-scale issues, and which begins by asking ourselves very basic and simple questions. How much waste do we generate? What does it look like? How necessary is it? Where does it go? Why? Questions which are so straightforward, so seemingly basic, so concrete, so personal, that we may be able to ask it and have a following discussion about it with virtually every single other human being, regardless of their level of interest, regardless of what they look like, what background they may have, where they are from, what their religious beliefs may be, what their sexual orientation may be, what their political affiliation may be, how old they may be, what line of work they may be in, or whether or not they consider themselves an environmental advocate. By beginning with waste, we are all on the same page, and zero waste, as an alternative, allows us to work towards these larger concurrent objectives, right here, right now, beginning with waste.
This concludes our session. Thank you for following along. To learn more about the fundamentals of zero waste or to become a zero waste associate, please register for our courses at zerowastecanada.ca/education-training.
Ruth Abbey, she is the chair of Zero Waste USA. She is also a director in the Alameda Zero Waste organization. She's been an active member of California organizing and is a consultant on zero waste plans throughout the world.
Good afternoon. This is Ruth Abbey with Zero Waste USA, and I'm going to be presenting several communities that are on the journey to zero waste. Here are my case studies that I'm going to be presenting to you today. San Fernando City in the Philippines, Capanari in Italy, Göteborg in Sweden, Goldberg Moali in Australia, Alameda, California, USA, and Kamakatsu in Japan. So first, the Philippines at a glance. There are over 7,000 islands in the Philippines, and there is a population of 95 million. But in the Philippines, they do have a national ban on incineration. San Fernando City is a small city of 115,000 population, and it is divided into 59 barangays, which are the smallest administrative division in the Philippines, kind of like a neighborhood. And so recycling and waste management, zero waste is organized at that neighborhood level. So in San Fernando City, they are working toward zero waste. They adopted a zero waste principle and set targets for 60% recycling by 2013, 70% by 2015, and so on. And their goal for 2025 is 90%. They achieved 75% by 2017 and are working on that last 12%. They are a model for decentralization, and they have a number of material recovery facilities, MRFs, in 33 of the 35 villages. Some of their approaches to zero waste solutions includes education through eco-friendly schools, where the curriculum is integrated with zero waste. They have Mother Earth Kids Clubs, Zero Waste Monday, Zero Mother Earth Kids Climb, and a trash point system. And being a very young country in the Philippines, San Fernando City involves the youth. So they have an annual Zero Youth Festival that is month long, and it's held in 4 cities, attended by 5,000 youth. And there are some seminars, forums, concerts, and parades. And you can see they're a very happy group on the road to zero waste. Now I'd like to talk to you about Zero Waste Italy, which is the country with the most number of zero waste communities. Over 300 municipalities representing 6 million people have adopted a goal of zero waste in Italy. And I'm going to talk to you about Caponari in Italy, which is a beautiful town in Tuscany. And it's a 46,000 population in the hills above the province of Lucca. And they were the very first municipality in Europe to adopt a goal of zero waste. And they adopted that in 2007. They adopted 75% by 2015 and zero waste by 2020. They've achieved 85% in 2014, and they achieved 95% last year. So they're very, very close on the road to zero waste. And part of that is from the zero waste leadership. This picture is of Rossana Orcalini, who is a primary school teacher and a leader in the zero waste movement. He is also the president of Zero Waste Europe and Zero Waste Italy. And in 2013, he won the Goldman Prize, which is considered the Green Nobel Prize. And that's President Barack Obama of the US shaking his hand and congratulating him on winning that award. Through Rossano's leadership, Zero Waste Italy and the city of Caponari has developed a zero waste research center, specifically to look at what's left over in the trash and figure out how to design it out of the system. And then asking for changes, both of their residents in the community and companies that have the waste. So for example, this is a picture of the little coffee capsules that they had left over. When you look at the trash, that's what's in the trash: little coffee capsules, baby diapers, shoes, things that are not recyclable. And so for the coffee capsules, they worked with Lavazia, which is the largest coffee producer, to redesign their capsules to be reusable and compostable. Now I want to talk to you about Goulburn Mawari Council in Australia. They have a 28,500 population, and they're located in the southern tablelands region of New South Wales. And they're on the road to zero waste, primarily focusing on organics. And they had a problem with contamination in the organic materials. And so they decided to launch a city to soil program. This is to help residents understand that whatever they put in their green bin, whatever they put in the organic stream, is going to farms. It's going from the city to the soil. So it was one of 4 pilot communities launched for the City to Soil program in 2008, which was funded by the New South Wales Environmental Fund to identify best practices for maximizing diversion of organic material and getting that organic material back into the soils and back to the farmers. The program seeks to capture all of the organic materials for conversion to a high-grade soil amendments for on-farm benefit and carbon sequestration. When compost is put down on farms, it actually sequesters the carbon. And so this Cities to Soil program demonstrated what could be done. So it focused on soil management, not waste management, emphasizing to residents to bring those nutrients back to the soil. Organic materials include things like food scraps, yard trimmings, anything that is compostable or degradable. And so these have natural nutrients that go back into the soil as compost, put an amendment, and then capture that carbon. So the Cities to Soil program was very effective in reducing compost contamination by showing residents how their materials were going back to the farms, back to the soil, and back to their food crops. And here are the Cities to Soil results. They demonstrated that returning organic materials to agriculture increases soil health. They minimized alterations to existing collection, processing, and on-farm application. They used barcodes on carts to track customer compliance and award prizes to give incentive to people for keeping their organic materials contamination-free. And the customers included incentives and reduced contamination by 40%. This led to a cleaner quality compost product for farmers, and an application of compost increased agricultural yields by 82%. And the net cost for processing the organics were 50 to 70% lower than landfill fees. This was a win-win-win-win project and a very exciting demonstration project for New South Wales. Now we're going over to Göteborg, Gothenburg in Sweden. They have a population of 550,000 and approximately 1 million in the region. So it's the second largest city in Sweden after Stockholm. And their model program is the Reuse and Recycling Park. And if you attend this session tomorrow, you will hear Paul Martinson talk about that zero waste infrastructure and go into more details about the Reuse and Recycling Park. It's designed to enhance the customer experience while maximizing reuse and recycling and creating a destination for the community, an amusement park for recyclers and reusables. And you can see they have building materials, a thrift shop, a cafe, bulky items, and also a recycling center. So here's kind of an overview of the recycling park. It's really a place where people come to bring their reusable or recyclable materials and stay a while. They can buy things, they can bring things, they can talk to each other and be entertained. So at the Reuse and Recycling Park, it opened in 2007 at an initial cost of 5.5 million, and it gets 350 to 400 visitors per day. And this is an overview of their personal sorters or personal shoppers in reverse. Folks drive in with their materials, and then staff help them unload the materials and put the recyclable or reusable materials in the proper place. And then people can park and then stay a while. So the facility hosts concerts and festivals, clowns and dog trainers, and entertains children. And this dog in Sweden can sort materials into 6 different categories, things like paper, metal, glass. So if a dog in Sweden can sort materials and keep them separated, then you can too. Moving over to Alameda, California, that's where I am. We have a population of 75,000 population, and it's an island city on the coast of Oakland across the bay from San Francisco. And you can see it's a beautiful beach town, and we would like to keep it that way. But because Alameda is an island in the San Francisco Bay, we are very subject to climate change impacts. This is our island, this is our town. And if you look at what would happen with sea level rise impacts, you can see after 1 meter of sea level rise, we're really inundated. 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters, 5 meters, we're practically underwater at 10 meters. So it's really important to us to be a model for leadership for climate change, climate reduction, and zero waste. So Alameda is a leader in zero waste. We had our first door-to-door cart collection program in 1997 and food scrap diversion in 2002. So we've had almost 20 years of demonstrating that you can separate your recyclable and compostable materials and get those back to the economy or the soil. We have comprehensive construction and demolition recycling requirements. A climate action plan was adopted in 2008, a ban on styrofoam containers, a zero waste implementation plan, a ban on single-use plastics, and a ban on single-use plastic foodware in 2018. And as of about 2017, we achieved 79% diversion and about 81% diversion today. Alameda's greenhouse gas reduction potential by initiative is an important thing to understand because the city has a climate action goal and zero waste initiatives can help it achieve that goal. 58% of the initiatives in this local climate action plan could be achieved through zero waste reduction. The city has community-based approaches. I work with the Community Action for Sustainable Alameda, which helped to develop the local action plan for climate protection, the zero waste implementation plan, the Green Schools Challenge. We work with Miss Alameda, who ran for Miss California, and she has a program called Miss Alameda Says Compost, targeting restaurant food scraps. And we also work with our faith community, the mosques, churches, temples, to help them green their congregations and green their places of worship. This is Miss Alameda, who is Jessica Robinson. She also has an alter ego called Resilience. And if you go to her website, Resilience Birthright, you can see her superhero that helps people, inspire people to reduce waste and help reduce the impacts of climate change. So her program targeted food scraps, and she diverted over 1,000 tons from landfill and reduced over 1,300 metric tons per year through her restaurant program. This is Alameda Green Schools Challenge. These young ladies are the Bay Frame School's tree musketeers because they care about the earth. And they helped the school district increase their diversion from 41% to 75% in 3 years, which is amazing. So all of the schools participate to create a zero waste culture change. Alameda's single-use plastic foodware ban took effect in 2018 and was a little bit impacted by the pandemic, but no single-use plastics are allowed in Alameda, only compostable or reusable. And so we have a program to help restaurants convert from single-use disposable containers for foodware to reusables. And this is a student-led project. They're a boba tea project. So boba tea is very popular in Alameda, and it usually comes in a plastic cup. But plastic cups are banned in Alameda. So this school project, the student-led project, was to help convince the boba tea shops to convert to reusables. And now we're going to move to Kamakatsu in Japan, which is a zero waste village, currently diverting 80% from landfills and incinerators. Residents sort materials into 45 categories. So I told you, Alameda was a leader separating materials into 3 categories: recyclables, organic materials, and leftover trash. Well, in Kamakatsu, they sort materials into 45 categories. And that's how they are able to achieve their on the journey to zero waste. This is a picture of their recycling center where residents bring their materials for sorting. They process their organics in household digesters. And this is Akira, who is our zero waste leader in Kamakatsu. And she has really inspired locals to do what they can to sort materials correctly. And this has helped them achieve their high diversion rate and reduce impacts for their community. So that's your Around the World tour to hear all about the zero waste case studies. And we really look forward to talking about our projects. So thank you so much.